over Calyrex Shadow Rider's speed. So this might be a matchup that you have to play without a restricted Pokemon.
I mean, if you even think the Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to be hiding in the back, maybe even attempting for the boost since you do have the Flame Charge. Have to see, though, going into this, Yuki's going to stick around with the same lead, but we are going to see restricted still remain for Daniel. So the lead is switched up, though, but it's going to be the Koraidon next to this Chi-Yu. So you get the Sun right away, and two Pokemon that can instantly pressure. I mean, even something like a Heat Wave or a Flame Charge here.
I think Flame Charge is the really important call out because the reason that the trades didn't work in game 1 is they were just damage and then he was vulnerable to Astral Barrage afterwards. But if you make similar trades to get these Pokemon knocked out with Flame Charge and end up with +2, +3 speed out of it, then it's very difficult for Yuki because the Calyrex will be slower. So important that Koraidon is out. Also, both of these Pokemon, these are the two Ivy Cudgel resists available, and so you're not under such instant pressure from the Ogerpon on the other side. So a really great lead adjustment if you think exactly the Whimsicott and Ogerpon are coming back, and sure enough they did. Yuki led the same again and runs up against a poor matchup for them.
And of course, as soon as the Koraidon hits the field, you gotta see the Terrestrialization, and this is gonna help with a little bit of extra damage for any Fire-type moves coming out if it is a Flame Charge. So going on into this match, it's not going to be the only Terrestrialization. We saw Yuki had spent it on that Ogerpon on that first turn. It was the extra damage. This time, too, it'll also drop that Grass typing to make sure that this is fully resistant, not just neutral. So yeah, right away, we get to see both trainers spare that Terrestrialization. Body Aspect, that's going to be the attack raise. Now going on into this turn, Tailwind. Right away, Yuki wants to make sure the pace is set for him for the next few turns of this match. And now with this Ivy Cudgel, this is going to be with the attack raise. This is going to be into the Sun, and it is going to be into this Chi-Yu. And that's going to be enough. Even if it's not very effective, well, it's effective enough at getting that one-hit KO. So Chi-Yu is gone. It's only going to be the Koraidon and the Flame Charge. It's going to be a decent little chunk of damage, but notably as well, this is where you do get the speed raise. But again, are you going to be able to catch up to the momentum, anything that Yuki can have?
Just massive damage from the Ogerpon in the Sun with the Terrestrialization boost, with the +1 from Body Aspect, just using the Tailwind speed to get up over Chi-Yu and KOing it before it could even move is massive. I do think it's a smart Flame Charge target from Daniel, while you might just want the easy KO onto Whimsicott. I think that would have been a disaster because Calyrex would just come in and threaten Astral Barrage plus the Ivy Cudgel double up into Flutter Mane, and life looks very difficult. Here with only the Ogerpon to go out on the offense, things are a little bit harder to navigate. You also can start counting down Tailwind turns. You could double protect through this one if you don't think a switch is coming, and then there'd only be 2 afterwards, and that makes a Flame Charge more valuable.
Gotta be a little bit careful with any protecting with the Whimsicott still around. Sure, maybe something like a Moonblast isn't as threatening now that you've used that Terrestrialization, but something like an Encore can really just kind of really slow that pace when you are looking to try and gain momentum. Encore, so you're not even gonna have the option if you want to go for a Protect. You are stuck going for the Flame Charge. So sure, you're gonna get the speed, you're gonna get some damage, but you can't go for a Flare Blitz to try and get rid of the Ogerpon on the opposing end. Ivy Cudgel, a lot of damage, but as you called out, Flutter Mane always will be able to take one of those hits thanks to a Focus Sash. Now we'll get to have Daniel respond in kind of both of these Pokemon. An Icy Wind is going to be a way to try and slow these Pokemon down on to this next turn. Now, it'll just be a Flame Charge. You don't have an option. You have to go for it whether you like it or not because of this. But it does randomize the targeting. And now into the Whimsicott, that's going to be a free switch for Yuki.
Yeah, Yuki may have gotten what he wanted out of that Encore, or maybe not. Maybe he wanted to preserve Whimsicott, but either way, it leaves a free entry for the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which will now be the fastest thing on the field. The Tailwind matches the +2 Flame Charges, matches the Photosynthesis boost, and means that the Astral Barrage is moving first and will do massive damage to these Pokemon. Now, it might not be able to pick up a one-hit KO on the Koraidon, though obviously it can finish off Flutter Mane, and the Ogerpon is definitely now slower than the Koraidon, so probably there's a good chance Koraidon gets a chance to attack here. But it might be too little too late. If an Astral Barrage really does land into Koraidon, and then an Ivy Cudgel finishes it up even after an attack, a Flame Charge they probably can't pick up either KO after the Encore as a low base power move. It's going to be an uphill battle for Daniel to find the opportunities to get many more attacks off with just dwindling total health on the team. The best thing going for him is that there's only a couple of turns of Tailwind left. If you can get past them, then Photosynthesis Flame Charge, they're giving you the advantage.
I mean, Flutter Mane can at least make it past this turn right here, right now. But again, Koraidon has none of that opportunity. Follow me, though, so it's not going to be hit, but when it's an Astral Barrage, you're still going to be getting hit regardless. Now, it's just going to be into this Koraidon. You don't have any boosts under your belt, but that's still a lot of damage. You'll be able to respond in kind, though, and do some more damage. And again, you're still doing a good amount since it is in the sun and everything else. But into the Ogrepon is not going to be a KO regardless.
Could have been really good progress for Daniel had that been a KO at +3 speed, should move before Calyrex, but can now just get redirected by Follow Me. Again, the Encore paying more dividends because Koraidon can't protect itself through this last turn of Tailwind. It has to click Flame Charge one more time and be vulnerable to Follow Me, plus Astral Barrage. Fluttermane's still slower than Calyrex as well. We do see there's a Brute Bonnet in the back, something that could take an Astral Barrage, but it's hard to navigate it in. They'll take a ton of damage doing so and maybe can't take repeated ones.
That's the scary thing too, especially if it isn't to Follow Me at some point, though you're gonna risk it. Fluttermane's already protected. You're not gonna go for the 1 and 3, so you're gonna risk it with this Brute Bonnet. Moving on into the field, you get to see Photosynthesis, defense, but you are gonna be spared from this Ogrepon. Again, Follow Me to make sure this Calyrex stays safe. Flame Charge, we're at the point where this is the fastest thing. This is added up, and Ogrepon finally, at this stage in the match, is going to be dealt with. But again, Calyrex has been left unchecked. You didn't have a choice, and we already saw how much damage it did into the Koraidon, so that'll still be lost. But at least you've made it through the Tailwind, and you have that Sucker Punch pressure for next turn. As Astral Barrage, finally animation coming through, will make it official. Brute Bonnet takes the hit quite well.
Sucker Punch pressure is really important, especially with Terastallization already used in Ogrepon. There's no way for the Calyrex to get out of it. Sun, momentarily important as well, but just after Tailwind expires, one turn later, the Sun will expire as well with no way to reset it, and so Fluttermane will go back to being slower than Calyrex. Before this turn, it is faster. It's going to probably come down to what Yuki's last Pokemon is. The Urshifu going to be really good last Pokemon for dealing with the Brute Bonnet. Problem is the Fluttermane in the meantime. You can't use the Calyrex to remove the Fluttermane while the Sucker Punch is being threatened. You don't have the Terastallization to get away from it. You don't have Aqua Jet to finish off the Fluttermane either. And so it probably means there is an avenue for one Moonblast from this Fluttermane. You can't use Terastallization to protect the Urshifu from that either. So Daniel might just have the right pieces in place to be able to threaten a Sucker Punch, use that to get a Moonblast into Urshifu, and try to close the game from there.
So being able to get rid of that Ogrepon, so the Sucker Punch actually does have the stayed pressure, absolutely huge in this matchup here. In some Urshifus, you get to see the Aqua Jet, you get to see some sort of priority. This one notably going without. Detect will be the move of choice to get past this turn. This Sucker Punch, it's going actually to not be active, not work. So nothing coming out from this turn. The Fluttermane attempting to go into this Urshifu. Sucker Punch does nothing, and it's a nasty pot from this Calyrex to ensure that Sucker Punch wouldn't go into it.
Right, Yuki sees the checkmate just as much as we do and recognizes that it's not possible to go out on the offense with either Urshifu or Calyrex. So you make it through a turn with that combination of Nasty Plot and Detect, but where do you go from there? It's a long time till Brute Bonnet is out of Sucker Punches. There's a lot of Pokemon to play, and I don't see what has really changed. You didn't need the +2 special attack to get through these Pokemon. You just need the opportunity for Calyrex to move. And it's not going to get that while a Sucker Punch is repeatedly thrown in that slot.
Sucker Punch mind games, at this point with the Brute Bonnet, there's still a lot of HP, so it's not as scary, but that one's always like a weird one of these late game matches.
Right, but there's a timer on these mind games because you can't protect the Urshifu, so the Moonblast is going to land in there soon enough.
So we'll get to see an attempt at the Sucker Punch, yet again a Nasty Plot to make sure it fails on this turn. But as you called out, no Detect, Urshifu in the KO. So that puts an end to the duo of these two Pokemon and now puts this into a 2v1 situation. And if the Calyrex wants to go and try and Nasty anything else, it's not going to be allowed to because you have the Fluttermane to be able to attack into it this turn. So you click the 2 buttons. Calyrex will protect this turn, just to keep it out a little bit longer.
We mentioned in Game 1, this is the cost of the aggressive early Fire Terastallization with Ogrepon, is that you're vulnerable to Sucker Punch in the end of the game like this. Daniel didn't have the Brute Bonnet in Game 1, and so Yuki didn't get punished for it, but he makes the adjustment, withstands the Fire Terastallization, and has Brute Bonnet to checkmate the end of this game, and eventually come out on top with Shadow Ball now 2 in for Calyrex.
Yeah, so another attempt at a protect. Sucker Punch fails, protects fails. It's going to be Flutter Mane to come on through, and with no terrestrialization in sight, Daniel to take the final KO and force this now into a game 3. That was so interesting how this played out, because it was Daniel with the adjustments. Yuki yet again gets the speed, gets some aggression. Ogerpon doing some work, but Daniel slowly to make his way through that.
Had the right pieces at the end of the game, didn't give up too much early, made some smart decisions about where the early targeting went to make sure that Ogerpon eventually went down and Whimsicott didn't go down too early, bringing Calyrex on the field and kind of starting the snowball, meaning that Ogerpon was gone by the time that Sucker Punch was being threatened, and the Calyrex Shadow hadn't killed the other 3 Pokemon in the meantime.
Looks scary when Whimsicott goes down. You could bring a Pokemon for free, but this Koraidon, especially with the boost, was able to just consistently do enough damage that you're able to get it done. So even if you couldn't protect, even if you couldn't do any of the bigger damage moves, the Flame Charge just enough to get you there. And again, it goes back to the adjustment that you made into this game to bring in this Brute Bonnet, and yeah, a Calyrex Shadow Rider just out of options at the end. So in this game 3, I'm curious if Yuki wants to be going for the same thing with this Ogerpon, because yeah, that early momentum's great. We saw how it paid off in game number 1, but if you think that it's going to be a similar situation in this end game, then you have to save terrestrialization for that.
Right, if you can preserve terrestrialization, then the Calyrex is much more valuable. Neither the game gets Brute on it, but it won't be valuable in something like Chi-Yu just being faster and throwing heat waves at the end of the game in Sun. So you do have to make that kind of quick progress in order to get the most out of those 4 turns of Tailwind with Whimsicott. Maybe it means a shift up to not even have Ogerpon led in the early part of the game. I think we're also windows still for Yuki to win in that game. I don't know if Calyrex could have taken a Flame Charge, but I imagine it could have, and if one of those Follow Me's had given space for Ogerpon to attack, instead maybe pick up the KO on Flutter Mane, then there isn't the same checkmate where you need the Moonblast to threaten the KO on Urshifu to make the Sucker Punch stick.
All right, well, we see an adjustment, but not from Yuki. This lead, hey, if it's gold, it'll never get old. Make sure you can lead it every single game. But on the opposing end, it's going to be the Indeedee and this Flutter Mane. And we saw before that Indeedee, it's going to fall to this Herflame Ogerpon and the Ivy Cudgel, especially the Terrestrialization. So
we talked a lot about the critical adjustment to have Brute Bonnet for the end of the game, but the other Pokemon change in game 1 was to have the Flutter Mane available at all. The Focus Sash and the Flutter Mane having 1 HP at the end of the game is what let it KO Urshifu with Moonblast, and that's still an adjustment in this game. That means that there's not going to be such quick progress for Yuki through these Pokemon. You at least have something that can withstand and trade damage back and try to create some of the same scenarios where the Ogerpon goes down before it can get rid of, before it can follow me away the Sucker Punch. The Psychic Terrain is temporarily also preventing priority moves like the Sucker Punch in the game, but we saw that only happen turn 5+ in the last game anyway.
Terrestrialization in the match. This is starting to look similar. There's an Indeedee on the opposing end, and yeah, Flutter Mane can take a hit, but the Indeedee showed that it couldn't quite stand up to it. The attack has been raised, and now it's going to be a Whimsicott to set up a Tailwind on the other side again. So Yuki will have the speed. Ivy Cudgel coming out too. This could be right into this Indeedee. We saw that it attempted for this Trick Room, and it will never get that up. So Yuki does have the speed on this turn. And Flutter Mane, even if you're going to be slowing things down with an Icy Wind, it's going to be just like a Band-Aid fix for the moment. And if any Pokemon from Yuki switches out or gets KO'd, then the back Pokemon can still sweep the game.
Right, you're still worried about Calyrex getting a free entry. Icy Wind is a good way to dissuade a free entry. Koraidon coming in now also gives it a chance to Flame Charge. You're starting to make progress through the Tailwind, so an Icy Wind and a Flame Charge at the same time is really forward progress towards having Koraidon outspeed the Calyrex. Icy Wind plus now Photosynthesis on Flutter Mane also starts to threaten that Flutter Mane is just faster than Ogerpon, or at least Whimsicott, in the Tailwind, trying to protect that Focus Sash, because right now it's still giving you a layer of defense. So I think Daniel pretty well positioned here, but of course gave up 1 Pokemon for that.
One thing that'll be notable as well is in the game 2, when it was a Whimsicott to maybe kind of persuade these Pokemon from going for Protect, slowing down, it can't go for that anymore thanks to that Psychic Terrain. So that Indeedee from the get-go, even if it couldn't do too much, that train will be able to shut down any sort of priority towards your Pokemon. No more Ivy Cudgels here, at least not for now, because Ogerpon is going to be hiding in the back, and Urshifu hits the field instead as, yeah, Daniel Terrestrialization, Groudon hits the field yet again into the fire type. So you're not weak to a Moonblast, and your Flame Charge will get to do a little bit more damage. Flutter Mane protects this turn. You want to make sure that this Pokemon stays intact, especially to keep the Focus Sash intact, as Moonblast attempting to target into it is not going to happen. Now we just get to have the Flame Charge from the Koraidon. Some damage, notably as well, though. It's going to be about that speed. And into this Urshifu, it's not the damage, but again, you want to get the speed up. So when the faster Pokemon come out, you have a chance.
Yeah, now only 2 turns left of Tailwind. I think Yuki has to start seriously considering how to protect Whimsicott and get a second Tailwind. Again, smart targeting to not KO the Whimsicott on the last turn and give a free entry to Calyrex Shadow Rider. And the Focus Sash protected. You can see how much importance Yuki is putting on it by throwing the Moonblast in that slot, but Flutter Mane just protects itself. And so, 2 turns through this Tailwind, Yuki has gotten the big KO on NDD, but isn't making any headway against the more important targets. The Flutter Mane has Focus Sash intact. The Koraidon is healthy and getting faster. Should be able to throw a Flame Charge again this turn and continue to get faster.
Moonblast finally finding his mark into the Flutter Mane. The Sash will be broken, but the Moonblast from Flutter Mane a lot more effective, and that's going to be the damage into this Urshifu to get rid of the threats. All of a sudden, that Pokemon is gone, and Koraidon, the Flame Charge in the sun into a super effective hit. Whimsicott will not be preserved. Once this Tailwind is gone, it is done. And this Koraidon at this point now has 2 speed boosts to his names, already looking to be in a great spot. This has been such a drastic turnout in how this game 1 turned it out. And Yuki, all of a sudden, only 2 Pokemon remain.
2 Pokemon remain, only 1 turn of Tailwind left as well, and nothing to stop, just a double protect to burn through that last turn of Tailwind, making both of these Pokemon faster than either of Yuki's Pokemon. Follow me, kind of the last important value for Yuki there. Critical that the speeds of Urshifu and Flutter Mane. Urshifu not fast enough that the Tailwind was able to get past Photosynthesis speed boost, so Flutter Mane moves first and just Moonblasts the Urshifu off the field, and no Surging Strikes on that turn. Now you would expect Daniel to double protect, get through the last turn of Tailwind, and then now he's at 3-2 Pokemon advantage. That quick loss of NDD has turned around and become a decisive advantage for Daniel.
The change that Flutter Mane makes into a match as, sure enough, double protect. Your opponent has a Tailwind. You got to make sure you keep it past this turn safe. And yeah, anything that Yuki throws out, not necessarily going to be too effective into this Pokemon. And Koraidon at this point, with all of those boosts, like the Tailwind end, it just looks so strong. It even looks just strong now. And all of a sudden, for a team that plays around the speed on Yuki's end, all of it's in Daniel's favor.
Right, the speed is fully in Daniel's favor, so a Follow Me can probably redirect both attacks and let an Astral Barrage through, but 1, is the Astral Barrage enough damage to one-hit KO Koraidon, and 2, what is the last Pokemon in the back? Because if it's the Brute Bonnet, even if you take both of these KOs, you're just back into Sucker Punch mind games.
Yeah, which that's something you also got to be worried about. I think we have the confirmation that it might not be, but for Yuki, you know that there is always maybe some sort of possibility, and you have used that Terrestrialization. I think, too, maybe even just a big call on this turn. If they can maybe catch Protect somewhere and capitalize, that could be huge. But no Protect, Follow Me. Make sure that nothing is being headed towards this Calyrex. Collision Course showing that it was never its intended target, and so much damage. That's actually enough to pick up the KO. So this Flutter Mane will get a free hit at the Calyrex.
That should be enough. That should just be Shadow Ball going in. This is not one of the bulky Ogerpons. That's how it's been getting all of those KOs. It's not enough to take Collision Course, and so this is just it.
Shadow Ball into the Calyrex, all the damage being done, and Daniel to find a way to take the set 2-1, landing himself a spot in the finals here at Atlanta. What a match coming out, being able to see a switch up in these games and a path to victory. That was just incredible.
Managed to make the right adjustments. The Flutter Mane made such a big impact in Game 2 and Game 3. Its natural speed with the Photosynthesis, the Focus Sash, meaning that it was able to withstand a turn, the Icy Wind threat that disrupted Yuki's speed advantage, and meant that it was possible to make it through those few turns of Tailwind without losing the game.